You don't need a published book to start an email list. In fact, waiting until your book is published might be one of the biggest marketing mistakes you will ever make. Because imagine spending a year or even 5 years writing a novel. You edit, you pay for a cover, you have a proofreader, you get beta readers, and then finally choose a release date. And then you realize that the only people you can tell about your upcoming book is your family, your closest friends, and relatives. Why? Because you haven't started creating an author brand. You haven't started building connections with people who will want to buy your book. And this is something a lot of new authors will end up with because they will try to fix it during launch week. And I get it. I've been there too. I've made those mistakes as well because I didn't know what I was doing and I hadn't studied marketing yet and I wasn't the person I am today. But I don't want you to make the same mistakes that I did, so listen up. The truth is, the sooner you start an email list, the better. And yes, I know that a lot of people keep saying this, but that's because it's true. And in this video, I'm going to show you a beginner-friendly way so that you can start your email list from scratch. Build it up from 0 to your first 100 subscribers, okay? And even if you have books out there already, but you don't have an email list, this video is for you too, because it's never too late to start. Even if it's preferable that you start before your book is out. We will cover what you can offer if your book isn't finished, how to set up an actual sign-up process, your first 4 emails that you can send, how to find your first subscribers without spamming everyone you know, and what you can possibly write in a newsletter when you don't have a book to sell yet. And stick around to the end because at the end I will give you a simple 30-day plan so that you can get the whole system up and running. The goal is to stop every interested reader from disappearing. Hello, my name is Natalie. I'm an author and a marketing strategist. And on this channel, I share practical tips on writing, publishing, and book marketing so that you can do this without turning your entire life into content. And today we're talking about emails, which I know doesn't sound as interesting as book talk, going viral, becoming a bestseller. But an email list is one of those things that a lot of authors tend to underestimate so much, and that can actually propel it can launch your entire author career. I've seen it happen again and again. So this is something that you shouldn't underestimate at all. Written Word Media created a survey for indie authors in 2025, and I've talked about the insights from that survey in another video. I will link it in the description box if you want to watch that. But in that survey, you could see the fact that high-earning authors tended to have a bigger email list. So there is a correlation here between actually building an email list long-term and creating it and becoming a high-earning author. And new writers and writers with smaller followings in their email list tended to have a lot less money. And among the published authors who responded, authors with an email list reported a median monthly book earning of around $300 compared to $15 for those without a list. No, that doesn't prove that starting an email list will magically multiply your sales, but the survey, because the survey is self-reported and there might not be that correlation, whatever, but authors with an email list do tend to have, they do tend to sell more books. They do tend to have more of a plan around their marketing, more of a plan, stronger systems when it comes to launching their book. And for someone to actually buy your book, I say this as a professional marketer, not only do they need to know that your book exists, but you need to we call it warm lead-in marketing, and that means that they need to be interested and be trust you to even buy the book. So that is why we want an email list. We want to cultivate them and share stuff along the journey. And no, you don't start a newsletter to become rich. The reason why you start a newsletter is because you view your authorship as a business and you want to build something sustainable long-term over time. And you want to have a direct way to talk to your readers. Because the truth is, with algorithms, when it comes to Instagram, TikTok, even here on YouTube, we don't own the people who follow us. We have no way of contacting them if anything happens to our account, or if the algorithm changes, or whatever happens. And that is why when you have an email list, you actually own the contact information to those people as long as they're subscribed to the list. And that in itself is actually worth a lot more than a follow on social media, for example. And you can start doing this before you're published. And the first thing I want to clarify is the fact that an email list is not an announcement list. It's not a place where you shout out, "My book is out, come buy my book." No, that is not what we're doing. That you can use paid ads for that if you want to have like, "Come buy my book" or stuff like that. And that is an entirely different video, so I'm not going to talk more about paid ads here. Because the fact is, if the only reason someone hears from you on your newsletter is when you want to sell a book, that is not a relationship. That is just you shouting out announcements. And that is not what you're going to do when you build an email list. An email list is where you build a deeper relationship with your core readers. This is the place where those fans who will talk about your book on their social media, who will cheer you on no matter what. The newsletter is the place for those people to be. And a strong author email list requires the reader to understand what kind of books you create, why they might enjoy hearing from you, and what they will receive once they're subscribed to you. Your list becomes the bridge between someone discovering you today and potentially reading your book a year from now. And the reader might discover you through, a video on YouTube, through your BookTalk account, through your Instagram, through a podcast, your website. There are a million different places where they can discover you from, but most of those places only have, you will only have the potential reader's attention for such a short period of time that it's too short, and they will probably forget you. And this is also why you want to have them in your email list. Because if you think about it, when we read emails, like when I actually sit down and read an email in my list, on my phone or on my computer, I will be leaned in and actually usually read the entire email, because that is the only thing that has my attention when I read an email. When I'm on BookTalk, for example, it's so easy to just swipe on to the next video, or there will be notifications somewhere, or maybe one of my friends will start a live. There are a gazillion different things that are fighting for my attention. But with an email, we usually focus on the content in the email, which makes for the potential reader to actually grow a better relationship with you. The same thing is with podcasts. Maybe we multitask a little bit more with a podcast, but having an author's voice in your head for that amount of time, that also builds a deeper relationship long term than short videos on social media, for example. An email list gives your potential reader an easy way to say, "Hi, I'm interested. Please share more about you or your books," or whatever it is. There's another mistake that I see happening, especially here in the authortube community. Maybe I've even done this myself, so it's really hard. But that is the fact that we, as authors, we want to talk so much about the process of writing and share everything that has to do with it. We want to share a funny meme or whatever it is like. But the problem when we only share things about our own writing process is the fact that will usually attract writers more than readers. Because yes, authors are readers too, but primarily they will be there because they're authors. So there are a few YouTubers and newsletters that I follow mainly because of the fact that they have such an interesting opinions, and I have things to learn from them when it comes to writing. But I barely read their books because they write in genres that I don't read. So I'm not there for the books. I'm there for their knowledge about being an indie author, for example. And you need to have a very clear, in the beginning, no, you don't really need to have that clear a vision yet. But try to have in mind that if you only share things about writing, you will probably only attract writers. So make sure, subscribe to other writers' newsletters and see what kind of things they share, especially people who write in the same genre that you do. I've done this myself. I follow, romance authors' newsletters. I follow dark academia newsletters, and yeah, a bunch of other newsletters too. But since I write in multiple genres, I need to see what kind of stuff they put out there that I can get inspired by and learn from. If I only talk about writing in my newsletter and then I release a new fantasy book or a romance book, most of the people won't be that interested in that book unless they really, really like me and also like that genre. But they're not in newsletter for my writing. So try to decide who your newsletter is for. Is it for your reader? Then you should provide value for that reader in your newsletter. And yeah, I get that this is hard, but this is why I have an entire launch plan for you later on in this video, okay? So hang in there. Hang in there. What I'm trying to say is your first question should not be, which email platform should I use? It should be, who am I writing this email for? Step 1 is deciding who your newsletter is for. And how do you do that, you wonder? Before you even create a form, write one sentence that answers this question. People should join my email list because I have a newsletter is not an answer, okay? Neither is, to sign up for updates. That is not it. It might be accurate, but new readers usually need another reason to care, okay? People who don't know you need more. Your reader promise should combine 3 things: what you create, who is for, and what they can receive and expect. And an example of this, if I was creating a newsletter for my romantic books about expats, maybe it would be maybe I would write something like, join me for romantic stories about starting over, behind the scenes, notes from my books, Amsterdam inspiration, and early access to new releases. Or maybe I was building a newsletter for my dark academia and fantasy stuff instead. Then I might say something like this: enter the library for magical stories, secret chapters, strange books, and updates about fantasy worlds where stories have real power. Or let's say I was building a list for first-time authors because I write nonfiction or whatever it is. Then I'd probably write something like this: get practical writing, publishing, and book marketing advice without the overwhelm. And those promises are different because they will attract different kinds of people. And we only want the right people in our newsletter, okay? So the promise doesn't have to be super poetic. It just needs to, you need to understand who your target reader is, who your target audience is for the kind of stories that you write. It needs to be specific enough for the potential reader to think, oh, that sounds like me. And also another important thing is that the wrong person will decide that, okay, that does not sound like it's for me, because you don't want to have people who will just bounce from your email or who will just be there, just be a fake number, basically. Those people won't buy your books, so they shouldn't be in your email lists anyway. And another learning is the fact that you do not need to know everything about your book yet, okay? Don't think like this: oh my god, but I don't even have a title for my book yet. It's fine, because even if you don't have the finished product yet, you still know which genre you write, what kind of books inspired you, the setting and stuff like that. All of those things can be baked into a super interesting newsletter. Maybe you write dark academia fantasy, maybe you write romance books, maybe you write nonfiction. I don't know what you write, but all of those things can really help inspire and create a great newsletter. That is enough to begin, because also this is a part of you building your author brand long term. And your author brand is also a lot more than just one book. Because if you're just going to write one book, then this video probably isn't for you, because this video is for people who want to have an author career long term and build things one step at a time, one brick at a time, reaching a little bit higher, getting a little bit more readers all the time. That is enough to begin. The author brand should be slightly bigger than the book itself. If your first book is about Amsterdam, then maybe your second book is about something else. That in itself is a theme that you can have around your newsletter and around your target audience who want to read romantic books about different cities that they want to visit because they are expats themselves or love to travel themselves. So maybe your reader promise is stories about women brave enough to begin again. That gives something meaningful to build on before the book is finished. So the question that most authors get stuck on is, but how do I get people to form a newsletter? I don't have a book out yet. I have nothing to offer them. But you probably do, but you didn't even realize it yet. The answer isn't that you have to have something to sell. You should give them something, a taste of your writing. Maybe you will give them a short story from your book, or maybe you will give them a chapter that you've been working on. I know about authors who will like share snippets of works in progress, like scenes, and they will ask the readers of the newsletter, like, what do you think I should do here? Should she do or do? Like, you can choose how interactive you want to be with your audience, but to get people to subscribe to your list, you should create something called a reader magnet. And what is a reader magnet? You wonder. Well, that is something, a freebie that you give them in exchange for their email address. So I have, for my newsletter, I have a short story, a fantasy short story that takes place, I think, 150 years before my book Library of Eternity. And in that short story, we get to know how two of my main characters meet for the first time and why they become friends and start trusting each other, because they are very unlikely allies in Library of Eternity, but I never go into depth of how and why they became allies and why they trust each other, because a fairy and a vampire like shouldn't trust each other. They are very polar opposites, and there are a lot of reasons why they shouldn't trust each other. But for some reason, my main character does trust the vampire, and we get to know why in the short story. And the short story is also a way for people who are thinking about reading My Dark Academia to get a taste of what it's like, what the world feels like, what the story might contain, and stuff like that. So that is an example that I did. Another thing I could have done before I had the short story was I could have given them the first chapter, for example. I know people who does that, a deleted scene. Or maybe if you don't want to have something directly connected to the book, it could be a short story about the world or setting or something like that. And there are different kinds of ways that you can offer this. It also depends on which email service you use, but you could use BookFunnel for this. You could do it in the welcome email, just have a link to the short story or whatever it is that you're offering your reader. But that is a great way for you to actually get people to sign up for your newsletter, okay? And if you're still not sure what you're going to create, I'm going to give you some concrete examples so you can choose which one works best for you, okay? The first one is the story magnet. This is primarily for fiction authors because it is a story magnet. And this could be a prequel to the story, a side character's backstory, a bonus scene, the first 3 chapters, a standalone story in the same genre, or the opening to a series. But the important thing that your reader magnet should do here is to filter who chooses to sign up for your newsletter. Option number 2 is access magnet. Maybe you don't have time to write a short story or polish something, or you don't even have the first 3 chapters ready yet. Then there are still things you can offer. You can offer early access. Maybe they will get early excerpts from the story, deleted scenes. Maybe they will see the cover before anyone else. Maybe they will see character art before anyone else, or see the maps. Maybe you even share a private diary about the creation of the books. But be careful here, because behind the scenes in itself might actually not always be very interesting for a potential reader. You need to make sure that it has a story or a point for the person who reads it. So if I, for example, just write in my newsletter, I wrote 700 words today. I'm sorry, but no one would care in my newsletter, except for my mom. She would be super proud. But more than that, no one would care. But if I give them something that is connected to the reader experience, that might be interesting for them instead. So for example, with my upcoming romance novel, A New Chapter by the Canal, that could be the Amsterdam locations behind the novel, the 5 romantic tropes that sharpen the story, deleted scenes, a letter from Eva, my main character, or a note about how I came up with the idea for the story. That would feel more valuable to me as a reader, and that is actually something I would enjoy to read in a newsletter. But just seeing that an author wrote X amount of words, that in itself is not probably interesting. And option number 3 is a useful resource. This is especially if you're a nonfiction author. This is something that you can create, some sort of resource that gives them value and shows that you're an expert in the field that you're talking about. So it might be a first draft planner, a book launch checklist, self-publishing budget template, a workbook, or a 5-day writing challenge. And one mistake I sometimes see here is the fact that some people try to give away everything, But no, you shouldn't do this. You should give away something that is of value, but that is not too much. Like, you don't have to give away your entire nonfiction book or the entire idea behind it. Just give them something that is valuable enough for them to actually follow your newsletter. And when it comes to nonfiction, there are some really, really interesting examples of authors who has built big followings, both on Substack and on Medium. And then that has propelled them into getting 6-figure book deals. So if that's one of the roads that you want to go, like having a huge email list when you write nonfiction is so valuable, because those people are people who are very interested in the top topics that you are talking about. And just to take an example here, so a very weak leader magnet for a nonfiction book would be everything I know about publishing. Like, I probably couldn't fit everything I know about publishing into reader magnet because it's too much information, and also it's not very specific. So for you as a potential reader of that newsletter, you would be like, nah, that sounds too vague, I don't want it. But if I instead wrote 15 things to check before you upload your book to KDP, now that will spark the curiosity for a very specific person, and that person probably will like that newsletter. So that is a much better example. And option 4 is that you make the newsletter itself the offer. What do I mean by this, you wonder? You know, it could be something like every second Sunday I send a letter about writing, romance books, creative courage, and starting over. Or it could be like Nathan Bordeaux's world building. There is so much he's offering up in that newsletter that is like amazing. Or maybe the offer is once a month you'll get to enter the restricted section with one new piece of magical library lore, recommended fantasy reads, and updates about my next novel. Then the emails themselves become the product because you have made a clear promise about what they're going to be about. And maybe you will grow a bit more slowly with this approach, but at the end of the day, you will get the perfect readers for your newsletter, probably. Now we've come to the part of the video that I think that some of you thought I was going to begin with, and that is the technical setup. How do you start a newsletter? The first thing you should not do is spend 3 weeks comparing different kind of providers. Like, that's just a waste of time. Them are very similar. So, you know, do a short research and then just start. Because what you need is 5 things: an email service provider, a sign-up page, a clear promise, welcome email, a place to send people. Try to use an email provider that is actually designed to send emails. And depending on how you want to get people on your email lists, like some of the providers are better, for example, for when you have lead magnets or whatever it is. And some are better if you just want to share a really interesting email and they can actually get a taste of it before they subscribe to your list. For my English newsletter, I use Substack, and I would love for you, if you wanted to follow it, the link is in the description. But the reason why I use Substack is because I also want people that does not subscribe to be able to read most of the things I share there. But then for my Swedish newsletter, I actually use MailerLite instead, because those things that I share there are not as personal. They are more about the more of the publishers, my indie publishing house newsletter. So it's a tiny bit less personal, a little bit more, I don't know. But MailerLite is a popular option for authors because that supports forms, landing pages, groups, and automated email sequences. It's very easy to use and very cheap. So I would check that out, or check Substack out. Like, check a few different options out and just choose one. Because the thing is, you can change later. So just get started at this point. But if you don't have like a website yet, or maybe you like blogging, then I would say that Substack is better for you, because that is, at least my opinion is that if I'm going to read really long newsletters, I prefer to read them on Substack because it feels more like reading it on a blog instead of reading them in my email on my phone, because my phone is too small. So when I read like an essay long newsletter, I prefer to read it on my computer. And that's why, for me at least, Substack is better for that kind of content. But you decide what works for you. Just choose one. What your landing page needs. Your landing page doesn't need 12 different sections. Here's exactly what it needs: one clear headline, one short explanation, an image if it's relevant, but also it's good for SEO. So please have an image, the sign up form, and a call to action button. That's it. So if I were to have a newsletter for my romance books, it could look something like this. Maybe the headline would be, get a free romantic short story in Amsterdam. And the explanation would be, join my reader list and receive one evening by the canal, plus occasional updates, early excerpts, and news about my upcoming romance novels. And the call to action button would say, send me the short story. You don't need to bury the offer under your entire author biography. The landing page has one job, and that is to help the right person decide whether they want to join your newsletter or not. And another technical thing that you have to make very clear is the consent. And yes, this is the unglamorous part of having newsletter. If you're collecting email addresses in the European Union, the consent has to be very clear, very informed, and given through positive action. The person has to understand what they're joining, and it has to be really easy to withdraw the consent from the email list. And note, this is not legal advice. You should look it up for yourselves in your own country, but you should just know that there are a lot of rules about this, like legal things that you have to have in your newsletter and whatnot. So make sure that you check it out, what it is in your region, and if you have potential readers from different parts of the world. That means that this means that when you have an email list, you can't just add random people to it. You can't add everyone who signed up for your ARC reads unless they also signed up for your newsletter. You can't add every customer that bought your book unless they actually clicked that they wanted to join your newsletter. You can't add every person on your phone. And the thing is, you don't want to add these people either unless they actually are your ideal target reader. And it's better if they sign up for themselves, because you only want to have the core people who are super interested in what you're offering on your email list. Just make sure that you have a very clear opt-in and a very clear opt-out in every newsletter you send, okay? A clear unsubscribe button. So now we're at the stage where we're going to talk about the emails that you can send out, the welcome sequence that you're going to set up once you start your newsletter. Because yes, I do recommend that you actually have some sort of sequence. The minimum things that you have to have is some sort of welcome email that the person who signs up for your newsletter gets. The first newsletter that they will get, where you will give them the reader magnet and stuff like that. So the first email should be sent immediately. And this is where you set the expectation and show what kind of newsletter they've actually signed up to. And some subject line ideas might be, your story is here, welcome to the library, your Amsterdam story is waiting, here's a checklist I promised. Also, the email in itself can be very simple. It can sound like something like this. Hello, and then the first name of the person who signed up. Thank you for joining me. You can download your copy of One Evening by the Canal here. Over the next few weeks, I will send you occasional notes about romantic stories, writing, Amsterdam inspiration, and my upcoming novel, A New Chapter by the Canal. I'd love to know what brought you here. What kind of romance do you usually enjoy reading? Natalie. And why did I add the last question here, you wonder? Because that is actually a way for you to start building the real relationship with your reader. The people who answer that will provide you with really important information, because you will discover what kind of romance novels they love. Maybe they love second chance romance, enemies to lovers, love triangles. Whatever information you get from here can shape the future of your newsletter, but also your writing. And in email number 2, I want you to explain why you write. So this email should be sent 1 or 2 days later. And some subject line ideas are, why I keep writing new beginnings, the question that started the book, why Amsterdam, what kind of stories I want to tell. The email should not be your entire life story, but it should give some glimpses into the inspiration to the kind of stories that you write, because this deepens the relationship between you and the reader. So for example, you could write something like this. I've spent several summers in Amsterdam and I've always loved how the city feels both lively and intimate. But the novel did not begin with the channels. It began with a question: what happens when someone who dreams about writing romance stops believing in love? And then connect that question to the reader. I think many of us have moments when the story we imagined for our life stops making sense. Those are the stories that I keep returning to, the moments when someone has to decide whether or not to begin again. And now the reader understands why I love writing romance, about starting over. And FYI, these are fictional examples, but I have taken my upcoming romance novel as an example when writing these examples. I do not have a romance newsletter if you're looking for it, just so we're clear. Maybe I will create one in the future. And email number 3 should demonstrate experience. So this could be sent 2 or 3 days later again. This should give the reader more of what they came for. A short excerpt, a recommendation, a character introduction, a trope discussion, or a setting note. For nonfiction, of course, you should provide them with useful lessons or frameworks that they can take with them. And some subject ideas for your newsletter could be 5 days, no expectations, what could go wrong? Meet the woman who stopped believing in love. The mistakes that keeps first-time authors stuck. Your goal here is to make sure that the reader knows that, why they signed up for the newsletter. You should provide value for them so that they will stick around in the long run. And email number 4 creates the bridge. This could be sent 3 or 4 days after the last one. And this is where you connect the free content to the book that you're writing or has written, okay? And an example that I could use would be, if you enjoy One Evening by the Canal, my upcoming novel explores many of the same things. Amsterdam, creative dreams, unexpected connection, and the courage to begin again. And then you provide them with a clear next step. Maybe you tell them to follow the book on Goodreads, to join the ARC team, to reply with their favorite trope, to follow you on a specific social media, or simply look forward to the next email. But no, you can't have all of these. You can only choose one. For each and every single email you send out, I want you to only choose one call to action. This is very important because once again, we don't want them to have like scatter focus and be like, we want them only to have one thing per email that they should focus on. How do you find your first 100 subscribers? Like now you have the platform set up. You know what your newsletter is about. You even have your reader magnet. But how do you make people find your newsletter? That is a very good question. You can't just message 100 of your acquaintances saying, hey, I have a newsletter, sign up for it. Because once again, those are not your target audience. They're not your ideal reader, and those are not the people you want on your email list. You need to start talking about your email on platforms, other platforms, and slowly but surely leading people, funneling them into your email list. So the first place I want you to put your newsletter sign up form is on your social media platforms. And don't just simply write newsletter in your bio. Try to offer them something specific. Write a call to action that actually shows them that they will get some sort of value. Maybe it is get a free short story, enter the magical library, whatever it is, show what they will get as a reader magnet. You can also have a pinned post about your newsletter at the top of your social media. And this post should explain who the freebie is for, what it contains, and where they will get it. And then you can mention it occasionally on your social media. So I keep on doing this. Every now and then I will talk on my TikTok about my stories, and then I would say, if you want a short story, join me on Substack. But I don't want you to mention it in every post, because then you will, people will grow tired of it. So only now and then, and that is how you slowly but surely build an email list. Place number 2 is on YouTube. If you have a YouTube channel, this is the perfect place in your description to just have a link to your newsletter. Because the thing is, if someone spends 15 to 20 minutes watching a video with you, chances are that they like what you have to say. And then if they do, they might sign up for your newsletter. But once again, this depends on what kind of newsletter you have. Maybe you have a YouTube channel only about books, but your email list is about something else. Make sure that it's on the same theme if you want to go with this one, okay? Place number 3, that is a given, is of course your website. On your website, there you need to have information about you as an author, your books, and then you need a way for them to contact you and to subscribe for your newsletter. That's all you need. You don't need to have a blog post every single week. You don't need to do all of those things. But if you're building an author brand, having a newsletter and having a sign-up form is super crucial. The 4th place you can try is collaborations. And this is when you reach new readers through guest newsletters, podcasts, blog posts on someone else's website, author interviews, bundles, or newsletter swaps. I know that this newsletter swaps was really popular a few years ago, but I think that that has decreased a little bit, and we can see that the effect it's not as effectful anymore. But that doesn't mean it's not worth a try, because once again, each and every single author are different, and if someone has the same target audience as you do in a newsletter swap, chances are you will both benefit, because readers, we don't just read one romance novel, we read everything with the same tropes because we love to experience the feeling of falling in love again. And place number 5 is physical events. This is one that is a little bit underestimated, okay? So if you attend book fairs, writing conferences, workshops, libraries, signings, or local events, make sure that you have one of those little cards with information about you as an author and a QR code to your newsletter. Or maybe you give them a bookmark with a QR code to your newsletter. Giving them physical things and like having a physical QR code for them to scan. Even if when I'm at a book fair and I have everything, like I sell my books and all of those things, if I have a QR code that people can scan that walk past, maybe they haven't decided they want to buy the book yet, but they're still curious, so they'll join my newsletter. That's awesome. That is a huge win and a huge step towards them actually buying the book in the future. But what do you send when there is no book? This is also a question that a lot of people ask me, and I feel your pain. But there are a lot of things that you can talk about in your newsletter. What I recommend that you do is that you create content pillars. And yes, it's the same on social media as well. I really recommend having content pillars with like different themes that you keep coming back to. And in this part of the video, I would recommend that you create 4 content pillars that you keep coming back to. And the first pillar is probably something that has to do with the reader experience. Talk about themes and experiences surrounding your books. For romance, this could be your favorite romance setting, love story tropes, books about starting over, travel inspiration, creative characters, or what makes fictional chemistry work. Or for fantasy, maybe it's magical objects, dark academia, dangerous libraries, folklore, world-building inspiration, or fantasy recommendation. This content attracts the right reader because they will get more of things they already love. And content pillar number 2 is meaningful behind-the-scenes stories. And here I want you to share the process, but you have to give it a point. Like, it has to matter for the potential reader, okay? So instead of writing, I edited 5 chapters today, I want you to write this. I realized that chapter 7 wasn't working because Eva was just reacting to everyone else. So I rewrote the scene and she had to make a choice, and it changed the entire relationship. Now here, the reader actually learns something about the story, about the dilemma that the reader has to that the character has to face, and I offer something that is just more than chapter 7 today. Like, that can actually create interest. And here I want you to remember, you are a storyteller. Create a story out of the process of writing a book. Pillar number 3 is participation. Here I want you to invite the reader into some sort of meaningful discussions. Maybe you ask them what tropes they enjoy more, which city they would love to read about. They prefer illustrated or photographic covers. I personally asked my readers if they wanted silver foliage or sprayed edges for the Swedish special edition of my upcoming romance novel. And that was a great way for me to find out what I should be focused on, because when you print a lot of books, like, it costs a lot of money to have special effects on it. So it's good to know what brings value to the reader. And pillar number 4 is some sort of exclusive value, something that only the people who are on your newsletter gets. And maybe that is the first excerpt, maybe it's bonus chapters, maybe it's a private cover reveal, early title announcement, a personal short essay. Whatever it is, make sure that it's exclusive to those people so that they understand how special they are to you. So some of the biggest mistakes that I see with people who want to start a newsletter is, first of all, that they try to create the perfect reader magnet. And here's the thing, you don't need to do that. I haven't done that. I've actually changed my reader magnets over the course of me having newsletter. And since I also have multiple newsletters, like, I've changed them throughout the years. And I'm still learning. I will probably change it again soon. So just make sure that you have one, whatever it is, and change it later. when you learn, when your email list grows, when your collection of books grows. Mistake number 2 is attracting the wrong audience. We talked about this at the beginning of the video, but if you only post about your writing process, you will probably attract writers. And so make sure that you know who your target audience is and try to give them some sort of value in the newsletter. Mistake number 3 is obsessing over the size of your email list. The thing is, it doesn't matter if you only have 10 people on your email list. If these are people who really love your writing and are your target audience, that's a lot better than having 1,000 people who follow you on Instagram who doesn't even care about the genre you write in. Don't look so much on the size of your email list. Instead, try to continue to provide value. Try to continue to attract the right people, and you will win in the long run. Mistake number 4 is only emailing whenever you have a new book launching. And yeah, I get that it's hard to have a consistent, to email people consistently over time. I too fail sometimes, but I can't only show up in people's email inboxes and say, hey, I have a new book out, because that does not provide value for the potential reader. You need to warm them up and nourish the relationship with your newsletter subscribers over time. Mistake number 5 is to try and write a newsletter that is for everyone. This is something you cannot do, because if you try to write for everyone, it will be for no one. Double down on what makes you unique and choose one thing and try to focus on that. I know it's hard. I struggle with this myself sometimes. But if you do that, that will provide more value in the long run and attract the right audience for you. So now it's time to talk about the 30-day plan. This is how you build a system in a month, okay? So the first week, I want you to define your promise. Decide who your newsletter is for, what kind of book or content you want to create, and why they should join it. Write down your 1-sentence promise and choose a reader magnet for your newsletter. You don't have to create the freebie yet, but try to make sure that it's something that the potential reader actually wants, okay? Week number 2, I want you to create and connect. Now I want you to finish the reader magnet, create a sign-up page, write the consent text, connect the form to your email platform, write the first welcome email, and test the entire experience to see that it's actually working, okay? Week number 3, I want you to complete the welcome sequence. Write the remaining 3 emails, deliver and explain, share why you write, demonstrate the experience, and create a bridge to your future book. Then I want you to publish the sign-up link in places that you already control. Week number 4, I want you to invite and communicate. Share the reader magnet through a social media post, your website, a relevant video or article, and maybe even a collaboration. And then I want you to send your first regular email. You should also have a plan now how often you want to send these emails. And it doesn't have to be every single week. It's better that you set a smaller goal that is achievable than you having a huge goal and then you will stop sending emails after 3 days or whatever it is. I myself try to send an email at least once a month, since I have multiple emails as well. But when it's closer to the release of the book, then I might send more. Remember that you do not build an author email list because you already have readers. You build it so that the first person who becomes interested has somewhere to go. Maybe your first subscriber even joins before you have a title of your book. Maybe the 10th will join after reading a short story that you wrote. And maybe your 100th joins after they saw you in a YouTube video. And then when you're ready to launch your book, you're not just launching it to an empty room, you're launching it to people who already know you, who already like you, and who are excited to read your book. So don't wait until launch week, start your newsletter today. So now I'm super curious, what kind of reader magnet are you planning for your newsletter? Will it be a short story? Will it be an excerpt from your work in progress? Will it be a deleted scene? And if your book is already approaching release, you should watch my video, the 90-day book launch plan for authors with no audience, next. Remember that if you start an email list today, you will be thankful in the long run. Good luck, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.